there guys, this is TheBassSinger 313 here, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Compare and Contrast where we put in two separate games and compete them to see which one's superior. And today is, conveniently enough, Halloween. So I'd say let's take you guys back to the past during the PlayStation 2 era where we cover these two spectacular video games, Silent Hill 2 and Fatal Frame 2. I'd like to note that by the time I started this video, I never actually played either one of these games. I did play Fatal Frame 2 for like the first 2 hours, and afterwards I guess I just got scared of the game. But other than that, this will be my first time playing through either one of these games. I can sort of expect what may occur in Silent Hill 2, as I did at the very least play the first Silent Hill. However, never played Fatal Frame 1, so this is going to be a new experience for me. These two games happen to be the corner store horror games for the PlayStation 2 era, but which one is better than the other? Let's find out here. This is Silent Hill 2 versus Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly. Okay, quick warning before we start. I know I state the spoiler warnings through the story section, but for an extra precaution, if you plan on playing Fatal Frame 2, skip the intro cinematic. Yeah guys, remember those things? Those were awesome cutscenes back in the day that essentially got you into the mood to play the game. Unfortunately, Fatal Frame 2's intro cinematic spoils the entire game. Not everything per se, not even the endings, but it's spoiler heavy enough that it may ruin your immersion. I sort of stumbled across this intro by accident and I regret doing so. No idea why Tecmo decided it was a good idea to play the entire plot in the intro, and to be fair, you don't see it immediately. You start off at the title screen and then only if you have no interactivity for a couple seconds where the intro starts playing. But once again, I reiterate, if you plan on playing Fatal Frame 2 and enjoy the story, do not watch the intro. Wait until you beat the game and you'll see why. I can't say for certain if the Xbox and Wii versions removed it or not, but just in case, this information should apply to all versions. Also, I just found out that I own the Greatest Hits version of Silent Hill 2, which is bundled with extra content that's also available on the PC and Xbox versions. I won't be covering those, I've only played the main story so far, and honestly, this game creeps me out during the main story already. Please don't let me go back in there. Let that be a foreshadow as to what's to come for both of these games. If you're easily scared, you gotta be prepared. Silent Hill 2 starts our main protagonist James Sunderland in a bathroom reflecting upon the situation he's in. His wife Mary died 3 years ago from a rare disease, but somehow has written a letter for him to meet at a special place, located in Silent Hill, an abandoned town with no inhabitants. At first, it may potentially be a twisted prank, but recognizing the handwriting, James is convinced that this is Mary's handwriting. As we travel through the thick fog, we end up in a graveyard to meet up with a woman named Angela Orozco, who is in search for her missing mother. She warns us about Silent Hill as there's something wrong with it. James, on the other hand, doesn't really give a crap as he carelessly runs into danger, and the dangers there is in the world of Silent Hill are these zombie-like creatures inhabited around every corner. After some searching around, we find out that we need to head to Rosewater Park, and to do so, we're headed up to the apartment complex. With claustrophobic tight hallways in every corner and every corridor, during our quest inside the apartment we are met with a pyramid head-like creature, an invincible monster with a thirst for hunger, murder, and rape. And he will be the recurring villain throughout the outcome of this game. We also meet some new characters, Eddie Dombrowski, a gluttonous man with some serious bad case of Taco Tuesdays, and a little girl. She's a bitch. She does at the very least have a nice theme song, I will fully admit to that. We also meet Angela again, except this time not in a good light. Upon a mirror reflecting her, it is shown that she has a knife and is contemplating suicide. We stop her from attempting to do it again, but you can tell that she has some sort of mental disorder, as her schizophrenic nature at first wants to attack James but is ultimately stopped and gives him the knife instead, and leaves the room, presumably to search for her mother again. Our last encounter with Pyramid Head, and we finally escape through the other side of the apartment complex where we meet this little girl again, oh boy. She knows information about Mary, but she doesn't tell anything about her because, apparently, according to her, we don't love her enough? Anyways, we travel to Rosewater Park and find a woman who looks exactly like Mary, except no, she's actually Maria, a woman who's just there as a potential love interest for James. Anyway, she goes along with us and we head into another possible special place that Mary might have hinted about, and that location is the hospital. Why that's anyone's special place aside from having a newborn child is beyond me, and no, Mary and James never had a kid. Actually, this game does have a good explanation as to why this is considered a special place. After all, with Mary being sick, she's been bedridden during her stay, so naturally as a good husband, James would frequently visit her, so yeah, I guess I was wrong at that time. We go through a bowling ring and, I'm sorry. I go through because for some reason Maria doesn't want to go in, and we see Eddie and the little girl again, still being a shithead as always. But Eddie, on the other hand, he seems to be relaxed, eating pizza out for bowling. Now where he gets that pizza, I have no clue, but we found out that the little girl's name is Laura, and she's leaving. We give chase. Maria says she saw a little girl run past her, so we give chase through the stripper's joint, Heaven's Night, and finally to the hospital. While searching around, Maria gets sick and says that she needs to rest around in order to take her medication, so we left her to the hospital room and travel some more. During our rooftop investigation, Pyramid Head shows up again and straight up knocks us out. We survive, and it just so happens we finally found Laura. We get into an argument about Mary's whereabouts, but nonetheless, she agrees to follow us as long as we retrieve a letter from Mary. And so we go to the location in which Laura left the letter, and she traps us inside a bunch of monsters surrounding us? Laura. Fuck you. Seriously. Fuck you. You condescending, insolent bitch. Anyways, we kill them and faint. After our wake, we travel to the hospital and find out everything seems to be resetting itself. Some are inaccessible, and rooms that are not accessible before are now accessible. Laura's not even in her room. We seem to find her in a basement area. Anyways, we rescue her and try to escape, and then freaking Pyramid Head shows up again, tries to kill us, and proceeds to kill Maria after barely scraping her inside the elevator. That is unfortunate. Sad and lamented about the situation, he leaves to investigate more on Mary's whereabouts. After searching and backtracking back into the town of Silent Hill, this time enshrouded in darkness, we end up at a museum and into a prison. We meet up with Eddie once again, this time with a gun, and supposedly murdered someone, saying that he was making fun of his weight and giving him the stink eye. He leaves, possibly attempting to be a serial killer when he grows up. As we explore around the prison, we eventually land into a labyrinth-like area where— OH MY GOD, Pyramid Head! Quick, get away from it! I don't want it to die! Okay. Whoa, wow. Man, this game really knows how to entrap the player. Oh god. Anyways, after traveling some more and solving this puzzle, it turns out Maria is alive, despite being impaled and bleed to death. However, from her point of view, we just simply got separated from that long hallway. Is it possible that James is hallucinating? Nonetheless, our next goal is to rescue her somehow, and while we do so, we meet up with Angela again, and her father? Or at the very least, her father in a monstrous form. We dispose of him, and she gets angry and complains about men. Angry and pissed, she leaves the room. Okay, and continued on to the labyrinth. We finally get into Maria's prison cell, and she's dead. I'm sensing a pattern here. We continue on forth and visit this eerie graveyard with the names of characters we know: Angela, Eddie, and James. We jump down to our tombstone and face against Eddie, who has killed more people for making fun of his weight, and how much he enjoys murdering those who gives him discomfort. We fight him, kill him, and lament about how we killed a man, and finally escape the labyrinth as our last destination has us traveling across the sea to the Lakeview Hotel. Inside, we head into the restaurant and— I'm seriously gonna strangle you later.
Did I scare you?
I will use my belt! After fully exploring the hotel, we come across a videotape in which we left years ago and have yet to view. There happens to be a VCR machine in the room where Mary and James stayed, and so we view it. With the footage we are given out, it turns out James murdered his wife. After seeing her suffer long enough, he couldn't take it anymore and just offed her. After telling Laura the truth, she at the very least is understandably angry and decides to leave without James. As we leave, the hotel completely changed, similar to the layout in the hospital. After one final scene, we finally found the truth about Silent Hill. All the events, all the monsters, all the psychological mess implemented within James's mind was controlled by a dog! Okay, no, not really. This just happens to be one of those joke endings you can get. This is surprisingly adorable after long strains of torture. Okay. Back to the actual hopelessness and despair we're continuing forth. Our last encounter with Angela is on a fiery-filled staircase, symboling how Angela has always felt throughout her entire life, until finally killing herself within the fiery blaze. After further travels, we find Maria still alive once again, bounded by two Pyramid Heads! Oh, God, no, please, for the love of God, get away from me! Get away from me! Oh, they're dead. So, after dealing with those two monsters, we finally found Mary after all this time, only to kill her. So long, Mary, and the game ends with 3 possible endings, and the ending I got, I killed myself, drowning in my own sorrows. Wow, that is a depressing ending. I believe I achieved this mostly because I kept nearly dying and never really healed until I absolutely needed to. For the other 2 endings, there's the Maria ending, where you end up with Maria by the end of the game, and in order to achieve that, you just keep visiting her, hanging out with her, and making sure you protect her from any onslaught of attacks, even to the point where you actually check up on her during the chase sequence with Pyramid Head, despite the fact that the outcome is always going to be the same. As for the last possible ending, you escape with Laura. There's also joke endings like the dog ending and the UFO ending, but they're not really really that canonical, and in all due seriousness, kind of ruins the seriousness of the game. They are, however, funny though, and you can't really get them until actually beating all the ending games, so it's not like you're gonna stumble across this by accident, if anything. Okay, I know I mostly sounded nonchalant throughout the synopsis, but this game legit terrified me like no end. The story certainly keeps the player wondering what's going on and why everything is happening the way it's happening. Not every question has been answered, but I don't think it really needs to, as that's up to the player's decision to fit the pieces together or to interpret the story in their own mind. Same goes for everyone else as well as their side characters. Angela's story is more about depression and contemplating suicide, and I'm not sure about how one can handle this game without a trigger warning. Her experiences, especially after getting physically abused by her father and sexually assaulted by other men, I can see how her mental health is very much affected. Same goes for Eddie, as his tendency is wanting to murder people due to people fat-shaming him, calling him weird, ugly, and constantly bullying him to the point where he just snaps. A good villain can also be a very sympathetic one, and in the end, when I killed him, all I could do is just pity. As for Laura, God, she's the worst. I mean, I think this is the one character I feel needed a lot more work. Her annoyance and attitude towards James just irks the crap out of me, and it just distracts me too much to really delve into her attitude towards Mary, whom, if Laura admires so much, should also respect James equally, but never does. I get it though, she's a little kid and little kids can be pretty annoying, and also, the fact that she is a little kid also adds to her innocence as to what's going on within the world of Silent Hill, as that's the reason why she's completely ignoring them, or just completely oblivious to them. But when it's a life or death situation, that's where I stop thinking of her as a little kid with a big attitude problem to a gosh dang sadistic bitch. It doesn't really help that unless you get a specific ending, she's practically a character that's a bitch through and throughout. With the only exception being her last scene before the ending, I will admit, she is understandably angry at James for what he did to Mary, but it comes across more as her justification for her prejudice against him, rather than an actual heart-throbbing sad moment. If she was supposed to be like the antagonist of the game, then maybe I would give her some slack, but overall she's supposed to be some sort of supporting character, and that just doesn't feel right. I know kids are assholes nowadays, but Jesus Christ, not this much. I should also mention that the voice acting for this game is... oh man, they were absolutely dated. It's a lot more hilariously bad in my opinion, so I don't think it's tear off my hair bad, but more, wow, this is so unrealistic, it's practically funny bad. But strangely enough, I think the bad voice acting also adds towards the uneasiness and tension of the game as well. It's weird, I know, but this is probably one of the only times where the bad voice acting actually benefits to the game, as it adds the fact that this is indeed a horror game. Granted, in some moments it can ruin the immersion for some scenes, but whenever there's actual serious moments where there is in fact consequences, the voice acting is minimalized so that it takes more focus on the story rather than the voice acting, and I think it's a clever way that Konami balanced this. Overall, this was a very immersive experience. I felt like I was in this eerie Silent Hill game, and the characters are oh so entertaining, both in a scary and a somber way. For Fatal Frame 2, it stars two identical twin sisters, Mayu and Mio. You play as the main protagonist, Mio, whom, after a brief conversation about their childhood and Mayu's disability, she suddenly chases away into a deep lurking forest. Once through, both characters encounter a lost hidden village, completely abandoned. While exploring, specifically the Osaka's household, they seek a silhouette of a ghostly-like woman, and after further investigation, they encounter her. Thankfully, there seems to be a camera-like device that can capture her soul and get rid of the threat. Mio faints under the shock of what happens and wakes up by Mayu suddenly gone. She leaves the house and it seems to be lured by a flock of crimson butterflies. Mio gives chase and sees Mayu entering a locked door that requires 2 keys. We get them from 2 separate butterfly statues, and after listening to the prisoner named Itsuki, who calls us Yai and our sister Sai, indicating a direct correlation between both sisters and the 2 twin villagers who inhabited the village in the past, after finding the keys and opening the door, we enter and cannot escape as the door just happens to be locked now that we're trapped inside. After more exploration, we come across a woman who seemingly looks like a demonic version of Mayu, who is also impossible to kill. After more traveling, we found out that Mayu is talking to what seems to be a decapitated skull, but as we look at what actually happened, she just passes out. As she wakes up, she seems to be having these visions of what happens to a sacrificial ritual. Finally reunited, it is time for the 2 twins to find a way out, and they get separated again by a trapdoor. Well, that was a fun reunion while it lasted. Mayu implores Miyu to not leave her behind due to the fear of being alone, as shown by a flashback of them being young where they were racing. Miyu leaves Mayu behind, and because of her rushing, she falls off a cliff, severely injuring her. Miyu implores to Mayu that she'll be back real quickly in order to find the key. However, that has no effect as Mayu's fear seems to overcome her to the point of clouding anything surrounding her. We finally get the key, but as we return back to Mayu's location, she's gone. However, she gave us a note and a vision of where her whereabouts are. Apparently she's going to the Tachibana residence, but that area is locked, so in order to get to there, we have to go to a roundabout path towards the Kiryu district. And reading that line out loud, I suddenly have the urge to play Yakuza 0. We do so after dealing with a child twin girl who supposedly killed her twin sister. The thematic of twins sacrificing one another seems to be the main motif of the game, even further reiterated with the film reels we watch, where there seems to be an enactment of the twin sacrifice. Anyways, we find an underground passageway, however we stumble across the ghost of Sai, who seems to be immune to our camera. Scared to death, we drop our camera and flashlight, and it's a constant game of death tag with Sai. With constant chase scene after chase scene, we get to the point where we escape the Tachibana residence, and we recover the Obscura camera and flashlight. Upon further investigation, we found Mayu. However, she's not listening to us, and the door that she's inside is locked. We recover them by dealing with 5 crying kimono girls and recover the key to Mayu's place, and she's gone. This goose chase is getting pretty annoying, Mayu. As we enter, Sai returns and she's about to kill us as she opens the door to our location, and it turns out it's actually Mayu. She further tells us that we should never leave her again, as we need to head to the big tree for the ceremony. As we're there, Mayu collapses, chanting some sort of random nonsense, when in actuality there are hints to where we need to recover some fidget spinners to unlock a passageway in the shrine. Mayu herself seems to also be a ghost too, as when taking a picture of her reveals that she may not be our sister after all. As we touch her, we also have a vision that our sister's location is somewhere down the abyss. We also travel where Itsuki is located, however he seems to be gone, and in actuality, he was hugged to death by the villagers. We gather the 4 fidget spinners and the pathway to exiting the village is open. We head to the place only to be ambushed by villagers. They kidnap Mayu once again, and it is our job to rescue her, or possibly even leave her behind. Much like Silent Hill 2, this game also has multiple endings, with one being that we can actually save Mayu from the village, or leave her behind and escape on our own. And since Miu is such a fantastic sister, always wanting to protect Mayu no matter what, and always saving her in any dire situation, I, as the main player, gladly ran the fuck away. Doing so will prompt the lingering scent ending where a voice, presumably Mayu, tells us why we left her, only to have it be Sai as she attacks us. We then wake up in a broad daylight questioning Mayu's whereabouts and her final words being, "I will wait forever." Okay, well overall I gotta say this entire story was good, but the ending very left me disappointed. Okay, I'm kidding. I purposely got the bad ending just to cover it. It's one of those easiest endings to get. We head back to the mansion in order to save our sister from the Crimson Ceremony. After constantly diving into the underground and dealing with a few pests along the way, we head to our destination, but it seems as though the Kusabi has emerged from the abyss and it is our duty to defeat her. We do so and finally reunite with Mayu. However, no matter what happens, the ritual must happen unless they want to release the Kusabi again. One twin must kill the other, and Mio was forcibly possessed by Yai, kills Mayu, who was possessed by Sai. We choke her to death as our handprint emits a crimson butterfly. The ritual is complete. Mayu's body is discarded into the infernal abyss as the crimson butterfly flies away with Mayu's spirit, thanking us for setting her free from the fear of being separated with Mio. I got the neutral ending, dubbed the Crimson Butterfly ending. There's also 2 extra endings, both of which we reunite with Mayu without needing to kill her. One is a good ending, but we are crippled alongside Mayu, and another is the best ending where we save her, and there's no harm, no foul. In order to get the good ending, we beat the game on hard difficulty. In order to get the best ending, you need to beat it on the hardest difficulty on the Xbox version. That's going to be a problem. Now I'm gonna have to buy another copy of the game? Well, I guess since I now own the original Xbox, it shouldn't be a problem, but what the hell, Tecmo? This ultimately led me to wanting to not cover the extra content on Silent Hill 2. I don't own the best version of Fatal Frame 2, so I don't think it will be a good comparison. There's also the Wii version, which adds 2 extra endings as well, but as an American, I don't have access to it. You guys in Europe, you are very lucky if you own the game. Anyways, that was Fatal Frame 2 overall, and as a whole, I very much enjoyed my E-rank. What the hell? Okay, enough distractions. I love Fatal Frame 2's story. The theme of twin sacrifice is very apparent, and it makes the game feel a lot more somber and scary. The horror elements within the amounts of twists, tricks, and build up to what I can call a climactic ending, it all worked out very well. Not a whole lot of characters, I admit. Most of the ghost characters and how they are died are mostly side content explained through these journal entries, but the main focus overall were the twins. Their backstory, pretty basic at first, but they expanded upon the idea which led to ideals of abandonment, twin sisterhood, and determination. If I had to choose a winner between these two based on the story, god, this was tough. Not because both have very well written narratives, but structurally, they both have drastically different writing styles. Silent Hill relies more on the player fitting the pieces one by one, while Fatal Frame 2 is a lot more linear and straightforward. One is being more avant-garde, and the other just wants to explore a damn good story. Both games have well-defined horror elements, and both have fantastic sets of characters, minus one, and both portray their settings very well. If I had to give an objective standpoint here, honestly, both of these games kind of deserve the tie in terms of story. So I think it's up to my opinion, my subjective thoughts, to break the tiebreaker. So what do I personally like more? Silent Hill 2. I had to express how difficult this was. This was a very close match, but ultimately I'm going to give a slight edge towards Silent Hill 2. I think on a personal level, the story has something for those who are somewhat suffering from the same issues that all these characters have. Angela suffers from being a domestic and sexual victim, Eddie suffers from fat shaming. On a personal level, while I don't have the same experiences of them, I can easily relate why they had such a bad time in Silent Hill. Miyu and Mayu, and to a certain extent, Yai and Sai, have their own pair of issues as well, being the fact that they were forced to undergo a ritual in order to save their village, and whether or not they escape together is up to their willingness and commitment. But that's not something I can easily relate to. It's a creative story, yes, but Silent Hill feels more real to me, and because of that, I can personally relate to it. Of course, the story's not the only way for a horror game to be good. It can only survive if the gameplay immerses the player within its horror setting as well. Silent Hill 2 has you roaming around the town of Silent Hill. You start off with a wooden plank as your first weapon, with the game eventually letting you upgrade to guns, shotguns, and assault rifles. The combat system is bad. It's not complete trash. I believe Silent Hill enemies are at the very least designed for its bad motion controls, but still, I'm not a huge fan of it. For a horror game, I expected limitations on items you get, something that you need to conserve your ammo and rations for, but by the end of the game, I got plenty of usage for these items. I have never used the assault rifle at all, mostly because I didn't need it. Your wooden plank still gets the job done properly, and the game gives you a lot of ammo like no tomorrow. That does sort of ruins the atmosphere a little bit. Even with the medkits, I managed to gather and save them up a lot. I also think these controls are somewhat dated. The engine in which Silent Hill 2 was created with was not catered to deal with combat. The guns pretty much auto-aim the enemies, and if you're conservative like me, killing them with a simple melee weapon isn't all that bad either. A lot of these enemies you can easily run away from too, especially in open areas like the streets of Silent Hill. I'm gonna have to take points off the combat, but at the very least, I did have a lot of fun with the puzzles. Something I appreciated from the start is that they separate the combat and puzzle difficulty. I feel as though if I amped up the combat to hard mode, I might have somewhat enjoyed it. I still think that the combat would be shit, but it might make my conservative playstyle a lot more rewarding, rather than redundant. The puzzles really make you think. All these riddles are crafted in a way that all the hints you need is there, and if you could also think outside the box. I've certainly had a lot of trouble with most of them, but I managed to solve them all, and when I did, it felt great. Even on normal difficulty, these are some pretty challenging and creative puzzles. However, there was one puzzle that manages to piss me off, and I think most of you Silent Hill fans knew what this is coming from. The trash chute puzzle. All the other puzzles gave you riddles and hints, enough information that makes the player understand if they can figure it out, and this trash chute just throws logic out the window. Apparently, all you needed was a box of drinkable cans, which I originally thought were rations, but they're actually an important key item for this puzzle. You drop it into the trash chute in order to obtain an item outside. That is just dumb. James couldn't just kick the trash chute down, or hell, even just take the trash chute out, or shoot it. He needs to have an entirely different item to do so? Hell, I thought I could have also used this knife to cut open the trash chute as well, only for me to realize that using the knife too much made me get the bad ending. What the hell, game? As for Fatal Frame 2, it certainly plays a lot more differently. The movements are relatively the same, as goes with the camera angles as well, but Fatal Frame also has this first-person shooter-like mechanic thanks to the camera obscura. You take a picture of ghosts in order to damage them. Take a picture of the ghost up close or during a zero shot and you deal even more damage. This is way better than Silent Hill's combat. It feels a lot more interactive rather than autopilot-y. I'm in control of my characters, so if I do something wrong, I know it's my mistake. This game also has puzzles as well, and while they certainly make your brain more active, I don't think they're as creative as Silent Hill. They seem more like brain crunchers rather than riddles, and overall, pretty easy to solve. In fact, during my first encounter with this fidget spinner puzzle, I solved it by complete accident. I didn't know what I did, but the game made me progress anyways. Even the second time I managed to do it on my first try as well. Most of the puzzles I had fun figuring out was actually deciphering Mayu's charm. She spouts a lot of phrases and sentences that gives you a hint as to where to go next. The game has a lot of backtracking for sure, but thankfully I didn't get completely lost in the way. Not to say Silent Hill didn't have its own share of backtracking as well, but I think it was a lot less filler heavy. I only remember 2 moments where backtracking was mandatory, whereas with Fatal Frame, it's nearly every chapter, though to be fair, the Hidden Village isn't actually a big place, so I don't think backtracking is that much of an issue. Silent Hill certainly has a big map compared to Fatal Frame, but both of these games know when to properly aim for the next destination. Both games also have escort missions as well, and these also suck. I don't think they're the worst examples of escort missions, but they are relatively useless or cumbersome. Maria has her own life bar, and to my knowledge, you can't heal her. There's also some moments where on top of bad combat controls, I was too afraid to fight, mostly because Maria keeps getting in the way. Same thing goes for Mayu as well. There are moments where I'm just aiming my sights towards the enemies, and then Mayu just keeps getting in the way. It's not a big deal in open areas, but in cramped ones, her model just gets in the way. Compared to which one is more annoying, I gotta say, Maria got most of my attention. She doesn't really do anything in terms of being a partner. Usually she's just there unless I run and abandon her. Whereas with Mayu, while she still has her own share of issues as well, at the very least she tends to help me a little bit. See, the ghosts are very transparent, so trying to find them is a little bit of a hard task, but Mayu manages to point the way of the direction as to where they're located. She also manages to block a lot of upcoming projectiles as well. She's a very good body shield. That may sound dumb. What happens if she dies during the confrontation? Well, I'll tell you straight up that never happened to me. Whereas with Maria, she happens to die at the very least once in my playthrough. Mayu, no matter how many times she gets hit by ghost projectiles, she never dies. I'm not sure if she just has a very huge life bar or if she's just completely immune to enemy attacks. Maybe I just got really lucky with her. But even after all the abuse she's gotten, she doesn't seem to have a tired animation compared to Mio, and I can't really heal her at all, so I'm inclined to think that this is either a bug or an exploit. It may seem like a downgrade for Fatal Frame, but I honestly rather have an immune sister compared to a dead girlfriend. And so I think Fatal Frame 2 has the better gameplay overall, with its better combat, being it more intuitive and interactive, where Silent Hill 2 kind of feels a little bit more clunky at times. Now, Silent Hill 2 does have the better puzzles at the very least, but Fatal Frame 2 also has a better partner system as well. So with the tie going on with Silent Hill being the better story and Fatal Frame having the better gameplay, it's up to the presentation to break this tiebreaker. Silent Hill is most famous for its limitations in terms of graphics. The fog effect is not only a way to cover up the PS2's hardware, but it's there for atmospheric reasons as well. The same effect is also used during nighttime and darker scenery as well, making the horror game more eerie in nature. The use of black and gray contrasts very well against the more bright colors, as whenever something like these are shown, it's a way to showcase that this part of the background is of utmost importance. On the other hand, it's also used just for background decoration as well, and I don't think that's 100% fully utilized. Enemies are as grotesque and gross looking as ever, adding more to the horror. Pyramid Head, while in gameplay may not be functional, he does look pretty iconic, and when there are moments where he is impossible to kill, his stature should scare the player easily. Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly also utilizes the dark and eerie colors to its full extent as well. Those 2 words in the title is not just there just to make it sound cooler. If there's ever a Crimson Butterfly on screen, it's usually a good indication that you're on the right pathway. As with a Pyramid Head equivalent, Sae also manages to play the role very well as well, being very creepy, and the fact that you don't have any weapons when she's around also adds to its eerie horror. In terms of major differences, Silent Hill brings more of a realistic Hollywood style with the character models, whereas with Fatal Frame showcases a lot more anime art style. These 2 work very well with the setting they are given. Silent Hill takes place in America and Fatal Frame takes place in Japan. As for the UI for both of these games, they don't exist. Well, with the exception of Fatal Frame's Ghost Detector and Health Bar, both of these games are rather non-existent when it comes to their UI. For Silent Hill, you can pause the game in order to equip your weapon, increase your health, and interact with other items, alongside with combining them as well, and I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of how the UI looks. It feels a lot more like a PS1 tech demo than an upgraded PS2 UI. Maybe they wanted to play it safe and reuse Silent Hill 1's UI structure, but I would have liked it if they looked somewhat different. Fatal Frame 2's menu looks appealing. I like this a lot. All of the items are organized to their own tabs, and upgrades are a lot more organized whenever you get them. I do have some issues with the first-person camera though. Whenever I fight ghosts, the ghost detector is always on the bottom right-hand corner, but whenever I enter first-person mode, it's on the top center and shrunken. This doesn't help at all when I fight against ghosts, and it's a little bit cumbersome. Aside from that though, I do like everything else. The special attacks you use are all color-coded so that even if you don't speak Japanese, you can tell what does what. Everything is centered and aligned properly, and the game zooms in whenever you're ready for a zero shot. If you want even more damage, listen to the Tonfa sound effect, as that will initiate a fatal frame attack. I will say, however, the village and the houses are a lot too similar to each other. Without a proper map screen, you're gonna get stuck in here for a while, and it makes backtracking a little more frustrating. With Silent Hill, while the streets may look somewhat similar, switches things up by having separate dungeon-like areas. There's a motel, a hospital, a jail, and a hotel that you get to explore, and all of them look distinct. Some floors do look alike, but the map gives you a good indication on the areas you can't access to. It also marks your destination on where you need to go to progress through the story, and lastly, something I feel I need to mention, the soundtrack. Both of these games have some of the best atmospheric sounds I've ever heard from. Silent Hill reaching highs with a variety of somber and depressing music, along with horror-filled contemporary music to further enhance the atmosphere. Fatal Frame also includes an array of various Japanese instruments with gongs, tonfas, and shamisen. But it also knows when to reel you in with the spooky elements as well, with the addition of heartbeats to further reiterate the horror factor. My personal favorite music tracks for these two games specifically? The theme of Laura, easily. Even though her character is not very much developed, the song is so good. As for Fatal Frame 2, the ending music, Cho by Tsuki Amano, is also equally as good. God damn it, YouTube. So, out of the information we've got with Silent Hill winning the story and Fatal Frame winning the gameplay, which game wins in terms of presentation? Both. Let me explain. See, both of these games, even under the same genre, are vastly different in terms of style and feel. I did mention that subjectively I did like Silent Hill's story more, so there might be a deciding factor for the presentation, but I'm going to be honest, even if I take my opinion into account, I still can't decide what I like more. Both games feel dated in some areas, but they also feel very unique in others, and by picking a winner, as cliche as it may sound, would just be the luck of the dice. And speaking of the luck of the die, if you guys are really adamant of me breaking a tiebreaker and not having any ties whatsoever, Silent Hill 2 wins. Yeah, I do realize that that's a bullshit way to decide a winner, but honestly, this was really close. It could have been either one. Regardless of who you think deserves to be the winner, my suggestion is to play both of these games anyways. They're both fantastic horror games in their own right, and I believe they are a staple classic that I believe anyone can play. Well, that's gonna be it for today's episode of Compare Contrast. If you guys liked that video, make sure to like it down below. If you guys have any comments, critiques, and feedback, I would lovely and graciously appreciate any and all of them. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. This is TheBassSinger, signing out.